friends, happy Thursday. Welcome back to another Cook with Kris. I am so excited to cook with you guys again today. Today I am cooking a green Thai style curry. Wow, a green Thai style curry. Not making cookies today. I am not a baker. But today we are going to make a delicious green Thai style chicken curry, but you can actually use whatever protein you'd like. If you want to make this more plant-based, you could use tofu if you wanted to, but I'm gonna use chicken today. You could also use some sort of like a shrimp or something like that. But this is one of my favorite recipes, and it is actually quite traditional. I use very traditional Thai ingredients. I am not Taiwanese, so I can't say it's that traditional, but it uses all those traditional Thai flavors. And you guys, I've talked about this before, but when I made pad Thai, I talked about how much I love Thai cuisine so much because it so beautifully uses flavors. I mean, there are many cuisines out there that beautifully use different flavors, but I think the contrast in Thai cooking between salty and sweet and spicy and a little hint of bitterness or a little hint of sour is just so incredible. And so it's one of my favorite cuisines to cook. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and do today. So I will share with you, most of my ingredients are prepped and ready to go, but I'll share with you the ingredients that I'm going to be using today, and then we're gonna go ahead and we are gonna get cooking. This is about a 30-minute recipe. If you're gonna do it at home, it always takes me a little bit longer because I am chatting with you guys. But here is what we need for today's recipe, and as always, I will post this to my stories after I am done cooking with you guys, so you can always check there afterwards. So we're gonna start with some chicken. I just have some chopped chicken. I've got chicken breast. You can use chicken thighs. I have about a pound-ish. It's like a pound and a quarter here. To cook that in, I've just got some coconut oil. This just happens to be refined because it's what I picked up from the grocery store. You can use unrefined as well. That's going to taste more coconutty. But you can use whatever oil you have on hand. A neutral oil or one that actually goes with the flavors of the dish is best. So you could use like an avocado oil because it really doesn't have a ton of flavor. I wouldn't use like an extra virgin olive oil because the flavor of that will come out and it doesn't really go with the rest of the flavors of the dish. But a coconut oil works beautifully. So we're gonna need some coconut oil, some chicken. We're gonna need a variety of vegetables. Of course, we have one sliced onion. We're gonna use 2 big old cloves of garlic and a big hunk of ginger. I am going to be using some bell pepper, eggplant, and green beans, but you can use whatever variety of vegetables you want. I highly recommend the onion, the garlic, and the ginger as your base, and then you can choose other vegetables if you would like to go ahead and mix in. And for our seasonings today, we're gonna use, of course, it's a green curry paste. This is my favorite that you can just get at kind of any grocery store. This is the Thai Kitchen brand. This does not actually, I believe it's vegan. It doesn't contain any fish in it, which some of them do. Some of them contain shrimp paste. So if you did wanna make it plant-based, this is a good one. Of course, I'm also going to use a tiny hint of fish sauce as well, which freaks everyone out, but it's actually a really traditional Asian ingredient, in Thai especially, and it adds such a delicious, like slightly sweet and very umami flavor to it, so that savory flavor. So obviously if you don't do fish, then that's not going to work. You could use coconut aminos instead, but I really love just a hint of fish sauce. I'm going to use some tamari, which is gluten-free soy sauce, but you could use soy sauce as well. Or again, coconut aminos, but coconut aminos they're more sweet than they are salty. So I would recommend using a bit more salt if you're gonna use coconut aminos. You're gonna need a little bit of salt. This is just real salt. Coconut sugar or brown sugar is gonna add a little bit of sweetness and some contrast to that green curry. By the way, this is a very mild green curry. Typically I add in some red chilies if I want it a little bit spicier, and I'll just take those out for the kids. I couldn't find any red Thai curries at the grocery store, so we're gonna leave them out, and this is super mild. A little bit of chicken stock, and the queen next to the curry paste of this recipe is coconut milk. So just 1 can of coconut milk, and to top, this is optional, but honestly I highly recommend just some really nice fresh basil. If you can get Thai basil, great. If you can't, it's all good. Whatever kind of basil you have will work. So that's what you're gonna need. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cook this up together. So I just turned my pan on. Turn it on about medium-high. I'm gonna put my cover over to the side. I recommend a high-sided pan. This is kind of like a wok. But some sort of a high-sided saute pan with a cover is what I recommend. So we're gonna start out, if you haven't yet chopped your chicken, you can go ahead and chop your chicken up. I mean, that's if you're cooking alongside me, but if you're cooking ahead of time, I recommend you always doing your mise en place before you go in and you start cooking. So mise en place is a French term for everything in its place. I'm just putting some coconut oil in my pan. And it just means that all of your ingredients are ready to go before you start cooking. This is the chef's secret to being efficient in the kitchen. Yes, things like knife skills are helpful. Yes, things like knowing the components of flavor are helpful for making your dish delicious. But if you want dinner to happen fast, doing the mise en place ahead of time is what is going to help you to become a more efficient cook. So there's a reason chefs don't come in at 5 o'clock when dinner service starts. They come in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I know because I did this for years, and they do their mise en place before dinner service starts. So I am and that's what I've done most of it ahead of time here. I still have to trim my green beans, but everything else is pretty much ready to go. So I've got about a tablespoon of coconut oil on the bottom of the pan, and I just swirled it around to coat the bottom. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my chicken to that. I'm gonna grab a spatula. I don't have all of my equipment, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm gonna add my chicken to the pan, and we are just going to saute. And of course, I am going to season my chicken. I talk about this in every Cook with Kris and every cooking class I teach, but it's so important that we season all of our ingredients as we are cooking. You want your dish to have a depth of flavor. You don't want it to just taste like a bunch of salt, and that's what happens if you add salt right at the very end. You're gonna taste that salt right away, and your ingredients are gonna taste bland. So in order to give your ingredients the seasoning they deserve, it's really important to season them throughout. So season your meat, season your vegetables. If you're cooking a chicken breast or a steak, you wanna season well ahead of time. We're talking like an hour ahead of time if you can. For this, it's okay to just kind of season in the pan. Because it is going to sit in the curry paste and the coconut milk for a while, so it's going to get seasoned that way as well. So I don't season it a ton, but it's just important that if you want that depth of flavor, to have the different ingredients a little bit seasoned, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and cook that until mostly cooked through. We're gonna take it out, and I'm actually gonna grab a bowl to do that. We're gonna take it out and we're gonna put it back in after, so it doesn't have to be 100% cooked, but we want it like 75% cooked. I use pretty much all of the bowls in the kitchen whenever I'm cooking over here. I'm just gonna move this over so it's not super loud, and I'm just gonna go ahead and trim my green beans while my chicken is cooking. It's the only other thing that I have left to do. Green beans are often seen in Thai curries, but you can absolutely use something like, and I love eggplant in Thai curry too, but you could absolutely use something like broccoli. Sprouts are a good addition to a green curry, or really any sort of curry. Or you can make this into a red curry as well. It's just gonna be a little bit spicier if you use a red curry paste. If you wanna be really ambitious, you can make your own homemade Thai curry paste, but I'm not at that point yet. That's not in my my busy mom cooking journey right now. It's not happening. I know I made one back in school, but that was a decade ago. So I'm just gonna go ahead while I'm doing this, just gonna watch my chicken. It's really important that we're not afraid of heat in the kitchen, especially when it comes to cooking meat. Heat is what cooks our food, and if we have the meat on like super-de-duper low because we're afraid we're gonna burn it, oftentimes it takes so long and it never gets that beautiful, it's not caramelization, it's called a Maillard reaction on the meat, but it doesn't actually get that color on it, and it doesn't have as much flavor. So don't be afraid to turn your pan up, cook that meat, just stay by it, because we don't want it to burn, right? But especially if you have a pan that cooks evenly and you coat it well with oil, you should be fine. All right, my green beans are almost there. I'm just trimming these, by the way. They're just washed green beans, and I'm just trimming off the ends. If you're gonna use green beans whole, there's no need to go crazy like chopping every single one. This is a great thing to get kids to do. My kids went off with Daddy before I even grabbed these ingredients. Otherwise, they love to help me in the kitchen. I always encourage any of you who have kids to get your kids in the kitchen with you young. Give them these little tasks to do, and they'll remember it. I remember shucking corn for my parents in the summertime, or trimming green beans that my dad grows green beans. That's his garden right there, which is why I point. I didn't grow up in this house, but in the house I grew up in, he had a big, beautiful garden. All right, green beans are done. Everything else is ready to go. All right, my chicken is about 75% cooked. And so at this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and take it off for now. Whoops. And sometimes I drop a piece of chicken on the floor. Never claimed to be a clean chef. We're just gonna put these over here. Now in that same pan, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add the onions just to saute. We're still at about medium-high here. I'm not gonna season them quite yet, but I'm gonna stir them to coat them with any oil that's left in the bottom of the pan. And I'm just gonna let them cook until they are mostly soft. So I'm gonna add those onions in, and in just a minute, I'm gonna go ahead and add the peppers, and then I will also add the onions and garlic, which I'm going to go ahead and get prepped right now. I typically wait until the end to prep the onions and, not the onions, I'm sorry, to prep the garlic and the ginger, because I don't want it to dry out. I really want it to have that really robust flavor when I put it in. So that's typically the only thing that I kind of do on the fly, but I'm going to be using my favorite tool. Many of you guys know my favorite tool is the microplane. Next to my knife, I love my knife, but my next favorite tool is the microplane, and I use it in every single class. If you guys find me in a cooking class without a microplane, call me out, because we're missing something, because I cook with garlic a lot. So I got my garlic cloves, and I am going to use a peeler on this ginger. You can definitely use the back of a spoon if you want to, or a paring knife, but this ginger, it's a little bit drier, so I find that the peeler works a little bit better. But I do like the ginger and the garlic to be nice and fresh. Yes, you could use dried ginger, but it's not going to have the same effect. And ginger is so inexpensive and adds such a huge amount of flavor. And both of these are great for the immune system too, so you've got that little boost as well. I'm just over here making sure that my onions are not sticking. And they're looking pretty good. So we're just letting those cook down a little bit. And I'm gonna add my peppers in too, just to get them start cooking as well. This isn't a huge pan, so the only reason I cooked the onion a little bit before is just to kind of get it cooking. I don't want to crowd my pan too much. I'm not really worried about my vegetables having a ton of color on them, but crowding the pan is going to cause more of a steaming instead of a sauteing. And if there's too much in the pan, then it's going to take longer to cook, just because everything's on top of each other. So something that can be helpful when you're not worrying about there being any color on your vegetables is just to cover it, because that will help it to steam a little bit and it'll help it to cook a little bit faster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, just because you guys don't want to be hanging out with me for an hour, do you? I mean, if this were a real full-length cooking class, maybe, right? That would be fun. I'm not saying we've got some full-length cooking classes in the works, but I'm not saying we don't have some full-length cooking classes in the works. They're a couple months down the line, but I'm excited to be able to cook alongside you guys. I know I've had a couple of requests for that, giving you guys ingredients ahead of time and cooking together, and yeah, it's definitely coming in the future. Right now, I have my meal prep class, which is going to be coming up on the 21st, which I'm so excited about. I did my first one with my meal prep course students on, oh gosh, last Friday? Was it last Friday? It was last Friday. What day was that? And we had a ton of fun, And they got all the ingredients ahead of time. We just prepped ahead for the week. We didn't cook everything together. We don't cook everything all at once because I'm not about that kind of meal prep, at least not in my busy life. I much prefer prepping ingredients, and we did prep a breakfast and a lunch, but we had a lot of fun doing that together. So I have another one of those coming up, a public one, on the 21st. If you guys are interested in learning how to meal prep in a way that is efficient and actually get dinner on the table in half the time, like the class is an hour and we get everything prepped for 5 meals. It's on my website right now under classes. You can sign up. You can come and join us in that. You'll get all the recipes and all of those goods as well. I love teaching meal prep in a way that is not stressful, because we don't need more stress in our lives, do we? So as you saw, I just minced the garlic and the ginger with my microplane, and those are good to go. They're gonna be ready in just a second. I'm just gonna come back to my peppers and onions. I can smell them. I know they're starting to cook. And they're darkening a little bit, but nothing crazy. All right, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add in, because the peppers are just starting to soften, we're gonna add in that ginger and the garlic. And we're gonna stir it, and they only need about 15 seconds. You do not want to burn your ginger and garlic. It's gonna turn bitter, and that's not what we're going for. Once you can smell them in that pan, they're good to go. I am going to actually add a tiny bit of broth. This is not my pan, and it does stick a little bit more than I'm used to. It's important to know your pans, you guys. It's really important to know your equipment. My pans at home, I know so well. I know like which ones have a little spot that I'm like, oh yeah, stuff's gonna stick over there, so I need to make sure I'm moving things around away from that one sticky spot. I had to replace one of my pans last week after a very long time because it started falling apart, and I was like, no. You get to know your pans like you get to know the back of your hand when you're cooking, when you cook as much as I do. All right, so we've got that ginger and that garlic in there, and now we're gonna go ahead and we are going to, where's my curry paste? We're gonna add, I like adding about 3 tablespoons of curry paste. You don't really need to measure it. You know what? I was gonna get out a tablespoon. You guys can hear me. I don't really measure. I like to add about 3 tablespoons, which is a hefty amount of curry paste. It's about half of the jar. I would start, if you're not used to a Thai curry, I would start with 2 tablespoons of curry paste and then taste it and see how it tastes to you. See how you enjoy that flavor. Green curry paste is not very spicy. If you're really sensitive to spice, then definitely just start with 2. It's not super spicy, so you don't really need to worry about it being overly spicy. But again, if you are new to Thai food, and if you're new to the flavors, then I would start with 2, and you can always add more. Do you guys see the sun go down? Wow, or the sun go in? It's getting a little dark in here. All right, once that green curry paste is in, we are gonna go ahead and we're gonna add in, you guys, this is so easy. I'm gonna move this over here just so you can see me a little bit more. This is so easy. This is absolutely something you can make on a weeknight, and it tastes like takeout. I'm gonna serve this up with some jasmine rice. Okay, I'm adding in my chicken. I'm just stirring. I'm gonna serve this up with jasmine rice, just like if you were going for takeout, you have some rice on the side. I'm adding in my chicken, and I'm just stirring it up. And then I'm gonna add in my eggplant. And then I'm going to add in my sauce ingredients. Now, I am going to wait to add in those green beans. I just wanted them ready, which is why I got them ready earlier. So I have 1 eggplant just sliced pretty thin, but this is basically gonna melt into this recipe. I lost my train of thought, you guys. I'm just stirring it all together. I'm gonna season that eggplant a little bit because eggplant can use a little bit more seasoning. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more seasoning to the top. And we're gonna add our sauce ingredients in there. Whenever there's a weeknight recipe like this that is something that you could get at takeout, I love to share it because oftentimes we're like, I'm tired. I just want dinner to be here. I'm gonna call for takeout. And you could have this done in the time it takes for that takeout to get to you. And this is pretty darn similar to what you're gonna get at the Thai restaurant. So I encourage you guys to try it. I'm spilling things again. You don't have to be perfect to be a good cook. Can you guys imagine me as a personal chef? I had to clean up after myself every single day. It was a mess. All right, you guys, so we've got our onion in the bottom. So we cooked the chicken ahead of time, right? In some coconut oil. We added the onion, we added the pepper, we added the garlic and the ginger, we added the curry paste, we added the chicken back, we added the eggplant, and we mixed it all together. Now I'm going to add 1 can of, this is just regular coconut milk, full fat coconut milk. It does come out kind of chunky because it's got the coconut cream on the top. Don't worry, don't freak out. If it does come out like that, it will absolutely melt in because it's that delicious fat on the top of the coconut milk. And if you wanted to use light coconut milk because you don't like that, that's all good. It's just not going to be as creamy. So I'm just adding that to the top. And then I'm going to add my other seasonings right to the top as well. And that is going to create our sauce. So I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons. I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon and taste it of coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is traditional, but you could absolutely use brown sugar. Coconut sugar is a little bit less sweet than brown sugar. So if you're adding brown sugar, it is definitely going to be a little bit more sweet, but this is going to really contrast that little bit of spice in the green curry paste and adds a really beautiful contrast. You don't want this to be super sweet. We're not looking for it to be super sweet. The coconut does add some sweetness as well, but that coconut sugar is going to add a little bit of sweetness. So I added a tablespoon. I might add another one at the end if we need it. Now I like having most of my vegetables covered in liquid just because they do cook a little bit better that way. So I'm just going to add a little bit of broth, just a splash. And this is just regular chicken broth. You could use whatever broth you have on hand. If you wanted this extra creamy, you could also use a little bit more coconut milk if you wanted to. And I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of that tamari. Remember, we just seasoned the ingredients lightly. We don't want this to be super salty. So I'm just adding about, I usually start with about a half of a tablespoon. And you could add more as you like it. Stirring it up. I'm just stirring as I go because we want everything mixed in nice and evenly. And then I'm gonna add just that tiny little splash of where I don't have the apron. It's always where I don't have the apron. We're gonna add a tiny little splash of fish sauce to the top. Again, if you're a little bit nervous about the fish sauce, you can always go ahead and add some coconut aminos instead. They're going to add a very similar umami flavor. And yeah, fish sauce does smell kind of fishy, and it's kind of weird to use at first, but I promise you it adds such a delicious depth of flavor. I really encourage you to try it. It's one of those ingredients you're probably, unless you have some sort of maybe Thai background, or a family member who does, it might not be something that's already in your cupboard, but I encourage you to try it. It's not crazy expensive, and it adds a ton of flavor. Okay, and I'm all about the flavor around here. So that's it, you guys. All I'm gonna do is I'm going to let this simmer for a few minutes, just so those peppers and that eggplant start to cook, and with that, the chicken, I'm gonna cover it, like I said, the chicken is also going to finish cooking. Remember, we cooked the chicken to like 75, 80% cooked, so it needs a little bit longer, but not a ton of time. And once this simmers and the vegetables are cooked, that chicken is going to be cooked, and then we can taste it. So that is the point where we can decide if we want to add a tiny bit more curry paste. I recommend, add most of it at the beginning because that's where the flavor is coming from. You can add a little bit more coconut sugar if you want a little bit more sweetness. You can add a little bit more tamari if you want it, or soy sauce, whatever you're using. If you want it a little saltier, you could add a little bit more fish sauce, except I'm out, so I'm not gonna do that. Or you could add a little bit of salt as well. And then of course, we're gonna add the green beans. So this is one of those dishes, I'm gonna cut up my basil right now too to have that at the end. It is one of those dishes that is both traditional and very versatile. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you can go ahead and use your favorite ingredients for this in terms of vegetables, in terms of protein. The basic recipe is that delicious curry base with the curry paste and the tamari and the coconut sugar, the coconut milk, and that little bit of fish sauce. I also love adding a little bit of lime juice at the end as well. That adds a really nice addition to it too, that little bit of sourness. So I'm just gonna chef and add some bagel. Apparently my words today, apparently I am thinking of baked goods today. Because didn't I say cookie at the beginning and now I'm talking about bagels? I think I'm gonna need to go get some baked goods this weekend because my subconscious mind is all about baked goods right now. I haven't had a bagel in a while. I'm kind of picky about my bagels. I like my bagels to be really fresh, and there aren't that many really great bagel places on the island I live on. Most of them are on the mainland, which I am on now. But the one that I'm thinking of is like a good 40 minutes away from here, and then I've got that's another like 25 minutes home. Maybe this weekend. Megan said, what is the best way to keep your basil fresh if you buy it and you're not going to use it for a few days? Keep it out of the fridge. Do not put it in the fridge. If you put it in the fridge, it's going to go bad really fast. The best way that I keep my basil, honestly, is in the like plastic container that it comes in. That is the best way, just something that is airtight but at room temperature. It does not love the cold. So that's the best way to keep the basil. Basil really, unfortunately, only lasts for a couple days. So typically if I'm gonna get basil, I'll either just get a small amount and I will plan to use it that day or in the next couple of days, or I will get a larger amount and make some pesto with it because it does freeze really well as a pesto, or it'll stay in the fridge for a few days as a pesto as well, but freezing is a great way to keep your pesto from like going brown as well. So yeah, basil is one of those things that just doesn't last. It doesn't last very long, but just keep it out of the fridge. That will help to keep it as fresh as you can. So any other herbs though, I've mentioned this before, but it always helps for any of you who haven't heard this herb trick. Any other herbs like cilantro, I do this with cilantro, parsley, and dill. I just cut the bottoms of the herbs off, like the very bottom, and I store it in water. I've seen people do this with basil, but I've never found, obviously I don't put it in the fridge, but I haven't found that it makes a difference, honestly, with the basil. I just cut a tiny bit off the bottom and I put it in a mason jar and I cover the bottom with water. So just like a plant, just like you would flowers, it keeps herbs really well, and I keep them in the fridge with just a bag loosely over the top, and I swear my herbs stay good for like 2 weeks, but typically I go through them in that amount of time. Fresh herbs are one of my favorite ways to add a huge punch of flavor to your foods, especially as we are coming into the spring and the summertime. Fresh herbs just, they elevate a dish absolutely very, very quickly. So I love adding fresh herbs. I'm happy to take more questions as we are waiting for this guy to simmer over here. I am so excited about the next few weeks of Cook with Kris, the last few weeks before we take a little bit of a summer break. But I have loved cooking with you guys. I think we've been cooking together for like 20 weeks now, something like that, since I started doing these cooking classes again for you guys here live on Instagram, and I've really, really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for everything that is to come in the fall. I'm just giving this a little stir. It's doing well. We're getting soft. We're not quite there yet. So it has been fun. Next week we are going to, what am I making next week, you guys? I'm either making crispy shrimp tacos, I think that's what we're gonna make, crispy shrimp tacos, or my basil salmon burgers. So my lemon basil salmon burgers, I love those so much. We'll have to decide. One of the two of those is going to be next week, and then the other one's going to be the next week. We're doing more seafood because we haven't done a lot of seafood. So that's going to be the next couple of weeks. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to make my favorite caprese with a twist. It's your traditional caprese salad. I'm using a lot of basil this month. This is the month of basil, apparently. Oh my gosh, caprese salad is one of my favorites. And I visited Capri when I was in late high school, and it's one of the most beautiful places if you've ever visited it. It is incredible. And so caprese salad is near and dear to my heart, kind of like carbonara that I shared last that I shared last week when I actually lived in Italy. But I'm gonna share that, and it's just a little twist on your traditional caprese, which is a really delicious addition to your summer. It actually goes really well alongside those lemon basil salmon burgers. So that's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've got a couple more minutes here on this Thai curry. A substitute for eggplant. So you can use whatever combination of vegetables you want in this dish. I recommend doing the onions and the garlic and the ginger combination to start. But you can replace the green beans, you can replace the bell pepper, you can replace the eggplant, you could use something like broccoli, you could use a different colored pepper. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Sweet potato is actually really good in a curry. So sweet potatoes, you could use carrots. It's not gonna have the same texture as an eggplant, but an eggplant really does kind of melt into it. But you can use pretty much any vegetables you want that kind of go along with Thai food. So broccoli, carrots, bell peppers, eggplant. What else am I thinking of? Zucchini would be okay in this too. It's not very traditional, but zucchini would be good as well. If you have an abundance of zucchini over the summertime, you can basically turn anything you want into a curry. The zucchini will have a similar texture to the eggplant once it's cooked up because it's pretty high in water. So any of those would work. Yeah, you can use whatever vegetables you want. My dad he's my source for vegetables in the summertime, and he's trying to grow some eggplant this year, so I think we've got some eggplant dishes in our future. But I love to use whatever fresh vegetables we have available in the summertime locally, going to the farmer's market, the spring of the summer, once we have them available. And curry is one of my go-to ways to just curry. You can curry anything. Especially with this really simple sauce. I shared last week or the week before, almost there, on my stories, and I believe I saved it to my highlights. I shared a green curry simmer sauce that I make as well, which is it's very similar in ingredients to this sauce that I'm making on the spot here. I just make it ahead of time, and it stores really well in the fridge for at least a couple of weeks. And so basically I saute some onion in coconut oil, just like I did at the beginning. Garlic, ginger. I don't think I used garlic actually. I used ginger, curry paste, a little bit of coconut sugar, some lime juice, and tamari, things like that. And so I can't think of the recipe off the top of my head, but if it's not in my highlights, I'll make sure it's in my highlights. And I blend it all up, and you can just pour it over vegetables and whatever protein you want to use, and it makes a really delicious, easy curry as well if you wanted to do that ahead of time. All right, let's go ahead and taste this because it is coming along pretty well. I can see that my chicken is cooked. When you cut your chicken in small pieces like this, it comes together. It cooks very easily, and the coconut milk, along with these ingredients, the Thai curry sauce, they make the chicken melt in your mouth. It's so good. It's also very kid friendly because it's not crazy spicy. It's also tomato free for any of you who are tomato free. I think most of you know by now that my sister is tomato free, and so I cook a lot of tomato free recipes, though she's not going to be happy about the caprese salad in a few weeks, but she won't be here, so. Oh my gosh. So good. Okay, so friends, I like it as it is. When you make this in your own kitchen, you can go ahead and taste it. And just ask yourself, okay, this is a really great way to start to exercise those flavor foundations, right? So the foundations of flavor are taste, texture, and temperature. So one way that we can add to this, okay, is by thinking about the different flavor profiles, the different tastes, okay? So if it's a little bit salty, maybe we need to add something a little bit sweet. If it's a little spicy, we add something a little sweet or a little sour. That's where that little bit of lime juice might come in. If it's too sweet, we might want to add something a little salty or something a little umami. That's where that fish sauce or the tamari comes in. Umami is that savory type flavor. I like it as it is without a ton of coconut sugar, but with more of the curry paste in it. And I'm just tasting my vegetables. My vegetables are pretty much cooked. And I just cooked down the sauce. I'm going to show you guys in 1 second, and I'll share it with you guys in a bowl. But this is not, oh, I have to add my green beans. Let's do that. Let's add our green beans. I'm like, this is something. It's missing some color. So that is where the texture comes in, okay? Having a variety of different textures in something like a curry adds interest, right? So adding the green beans in at the end, so they're only gonna take a couple minutes. I'm just gonna stir this up. They're only gonna take a couple minutes and they're just going to be blanched. So they are going to still have a good amount of texture to them where, you know, the eggplant and the onions and the bell pepper, they're pretty much melted down. They're very soft in this. And then having that little bit of bite to the green beans is gonna add a beautiful texture to that. And then we can also play with temperature, right? So we have the hot curry that we're going to put on top of the hot rice. Or room temperature rice, whatever you choose. We're just gonna cover this for another minute to cook those green beans. But adding that fresh basil on top is gonna add a little bit of coolness to it, right? Or the lime on the side as well is gonna add a little bit of that. So that's where we can play with those flavors and where Thai food just comes in so strong with some really delicious flavor combinations. So like I said, I love teaching Thai food, and I could probably teach a whole 90-minute, 2-hour Thai food cooking class. So if you guys would be interested in that, that's definitely something we can do in the future. Expect me to put up some polls about what kind of classes you guys want in the future coming in the fall, because I'm excited to share more of the food that I love with you guys. So we're gonna let this keep on cooking for just a minute. I'm gonna go grab a bowl so I can actually share it with you guys. Obviously, I'm not gonna eat it right now because it's only 2:39. Look at that. It's come together in just over 30 minutes with me rambling with you guys. And let's see. We're gonna do a little bowl just so you guys can see. But there was one other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys because I am so excited. If you guys have not yet seen my stories today, my girls came on and they helped me to share that my new cookbook is just out. So it's an e-cookbook. It launched today, and if you like really flavorful meals that come together quick, this recipe book, yeah, it is a recipe book. This cookbook is all about bowls. So I take the concept of making a really delicious, satisfying, and balanced bowl, and I give you 30 different options for balanced bowls. So 30 days of balanced bowls. There's over 60 recipes in there, so I give you recipes for different bases, different proteins, different vegetables, and sauces, so you can put together over 100 combinations of your own favorite bowls. Ooh, we're getting some steam over here. So there's a ton of options within it, as well as those pre-done recipes. And if you guys like sauces, oh my gosh, I've got 12 sauces. This is dripping over the side over here, so we're gonna turn it off. We're done anyway over here. So I just wanted to mention that to you guys because it is on sale today for only $9.99. So if you guys are looking for another cookbook for weeknight recipes that come together really quickly, they're easily customizable for your family, especially if you have food allergies or things like that. I have markers in it for gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free. And you can really easily modify it. If you don't like a certain ingredient, you can use a different ingredient. I give suggestions for every single recipe. Like you could use this grain instead, or you could use this sauce instead, or you could use this protein instead. Anything can be made plant-based because there's chicken recipes and meat recipes and seafood recipes and plant-based recipes. So it's very easy. Dana said you got to get the printed version. Yes! How long will the printed be available? The printed version will probably only be available until the end of the month. So there is a printed option, and it is beautiful, you guys. It is full color, and it's glossy, so it's very, very expensive to print. So if you do plan on printing it out, I recommend getting the printed option because I am ordering it in bulk, or I'm using a bulk provider. Distributor. It's going to be much less expensive than going to like Staples. I think this was going to cost me like $60 to print at Staples. It's $27.99 if you do want the printed version, but I'm just going to have it available till the end of the month because it's really expensive to print. But yeah, it'll be available until the end of the month because a whole bunch of you, when I asked over at Instagram, literally 100% of people who replied when I said, you guys want a printed version? Wanted a printed version. And it's spiral bound, just like the Healthy Mama Meal Planner. So it's really easy in the kitchen to just be able to flip it and have the recipe right there. But I'm very excited about it. So I'm glad you guys are excited as well. A bunch of you have already gotten it. I've only been to my email once today, but I'm very, very excited for that. So our curry is done. Let me go ahead and show it to you guys. All right, you see it there. Yes! Oh my gosh, grocery budget went over and you're using pantry meals next week. I totally understand that. My recipe testing weeks, my grocery bill is often quite high. And I love using pantry meals for that reason, to save money. And we're doing a whole pantry purge this month. I'm gonna share with you guys tomorrow or Saturday what our meal plan is going to be next week. Other than these ingredients for Cook with Kris, we're using all pantry ingredients pretty much the whole month, which is really fun, and it's a really great way. It's a really great way to save money. Though we do usually reward ourselves at the end of the month with like a fun fancy dinner out, which I don't know if that means we're actually saving anything, but we're not spending like, $400 out, but it's always fun. It is a really great way to save money on groceries, to start by using what's in your fridge, freezer, and pantry. That's not the one I wanted. That's the one I wanted. All right, I'm gonna scoop this in a bowl. I do not have rice cooked up for you guys to show you it alongside rice, because that's how I would normally serve it, but it's not quite dinner time here yet, so we're gonna cook up the rice later. You guys don't need to see me put rice in a rice cooker, but that is how I cook rice. I highly recommend a rice cooker. I don't think my parents, I'll have to ask my mom. I don't think she ever used a rice cooker growing up. I think we used kind of like the instant rice type stuff. But when I married my husband, who's half Japanese, he was like, we need a rice cooker. That's like the only kitchen appliance you need. And it makes rice perfectly. All right, you guys, it is not the most, we're gonna put some basil on top. It is not the most aesthetically pleasing dish in the world, but oh my goodness. So we add a little bit of basil on top for some color. We've got some color there. Let's see if you guys can see it. We've got some color with the bell pepper, and we've got some color with those green beans that are just lightly blanched. Oh, I've got my spoon over here. And you can add a little bit of lime to the side and make it a little bit more fancy, but it's all about the flavor with this dish. It's not about it looking fancy, it's about it tasting delicious. Oh my gosh. So good. So I hope you guys will try this recipe. Oh my gosh, you guys need to try this recipe. It's been a few weeks since I made this, and whoops, I'm dropping it. It's been a few weeks since I made this, and it is so good. Tell me you'll try this. Tag me in it if you try it. Take a picture of it, post it to your Instagram stories, tag me in it. I want to see when you guys cook my recipes. I am just so excited to share all of these with you guys. So we'll be back next week. Same time, same place. I believe that next week I am going to be cooking, I'm gonna do crispy shrimp tacos. So these are gluten-free crispy shrimp tacos. So we're gonna do that next week. And I will share those with you guys with a really delicious chili lime slaw. They come together really quickly. So that's what we'll cook next week. And then the week following, we'll do lemon basil salmon burgers and then my caprese salad with a twist to end the month. So I hope you guys will join me again next week. I'm gonna go ahead and put this recipe over in my stories. So you can grab it, you can screenshot it, and you guys can make it at home. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.